sagara, hriday se karuna kori. Vaishnava Thakura, Vaishnava Thakura, Vaishnava Thakura, Daya se sagara, Vaishnava Thakura, Daya sagara, Vaishnava Thakura, Daya sagara, hriday se karuna kori. Hriday se karuna kori. Hriday se karuna kori. Hriday se karuna kori.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Very nice to see you this morning.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Welcome.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna. Yes, it's so nice to be together again, studying Bhagavad Gita. It's Saturday morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam. So as we always do, we will start with the morning prayers to the spiritual master, and then we'll immediately start. We will continue this time with chapter 13. We started last time, completed about half of the slides, and today we will complete the chapter. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so chapter 13. Last time we had chapter 13. So who remembers where did we end last time? What was the important kind of juncture at which we had ended last time?
We Hare Krishna Prabhuji, we were doing Buddhi Yoga versus Bhakti Yoga, and we had finished till text 7.
Very
We had
nice.
ended in text 7, and we had to go to description of Gyan, and from 8 or text 8 onwards.
Okay, so yes, absolutely accurate. This is where we were at, and we were starting now with text 8, and we had discussed about the difference between, or the similarities between Buddhi Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Buddhi Yoga, intelligence applied to Krishna, applied in the service of Krishna, becomes Bhakti Yoga. And in terms of Arjuna's questions to Krishna, where were we at? What had we covered? Anyone else would like to suggest? Or ponder?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I don't recall exactly what the questions were, but I know that when we finished up, you were talking about material anger is due to the material modes, and that it can also be transcendental. And then a pure devotee's anger is spiritual. And then the example was about Hanuman, that he became angry. And Krishna sees the sincerity and the effort, and he rewards accordingly.
Very nice. Okay. Yes. So that was in our discussion regarding the qualities and the modes of nature. Very nice. So you may yes, go ahead. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, we had some questions there, that who am I and where am I? What we are doing? How long would we be there?
Yes.
These questions had to be further solved in this text, probably.
Yes.
Are you referring to these questions, probably?
So this is connected. Yes, this is connected. These are the same questions that Arjun asks in a different form. So he asks the questions that relate with the 5 topics of the Gita, which you also see on the screen now. And what were these questions? These questions were related to 6 things.
Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetram, Kshetragyam, Jnanam, and Jnanam.
Very nice. Okay. So last time we completed the first 4. Prakriti and Kshetra and Purusha and Kshetragya. We talked about the self, Atma, and the Kshetra. Kshetragya is the knower, and Kshetra is the body. We talked about Prakriti, nature, and this is where Divya Bhakti Mataji, we talked about, anger in the different modes of nature, transcendental anger. And we talked about Purusha. Purusha can refer to the supreme self. It can also refer to the individual self. And now, starting text 8, Krishna starts talking about jnana, or knowledge. And that's where we're at. He'll talk about jnana. He talks about jnana in 2 verses, and then he spends 5 or 6 verses on gyeya. Jnana is knowledge. Gyeya is what? Who remembers? What does gyeya refer to? We haven't talked about it, so you probably don't know, but if anyone knows, they can mention.
The object of the knowledge.
Very nice. The object of knowledge. Gyeya is the object of knowledge. So then he talks about Gyeya. Who's the object of knowledge? Object of knowledge is Krishna. So he speaks about Krishna for 4 or 5 verses. And then again, he starts to summarize his answers to these questions. So this is that list again. Prakriti, Purusha, Arjuna's 6 questions, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnana, and Gyeya. 1 second. So, perfect. This now are the different sections that we talked about. This is section 2 to 7, which Krishna explains the field of activities and the knower of the field. And in doing so, he also talks about Prakriti and Purusha, because the knower of the field is also Purusha to some degree, and Kshetra is also Prakriti. And they're also different because there's two knowers of the field. One is Krishna and one is the Jiva. And there's also two Purushas. Kshetra is the field of activities, which can refer just to body, but Prakriti refers to nature. Now, 8 to 12, we'll talk about knowledge, the process of knowledge, and then 13 to 19, Krishna explains the object of knowledge. I described how he talks about what is Gyeya. Then Krishna again comes back to Prakriti and Purusha. So now he really focuses on Prakriti and Purusha and their union. And then finally, he talks about Jnana Chakshu, the vision of knowledge, meaning how do we get to knowledge, right? How do we realize the truth, the process of gaining complete perfection? So this is everything in context, kind of seeing the big picture. So now let's go to text 8. So this is text 8, and the verses are very nice, but Srila Prabhupada combines text 8 through 12 because this is all knowledge, and he puts it together so nicely for all of us. But these are directly the verses 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 that he puts together. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. Right? So how wonderful. All these are knowledge, everything else is ignorance. So Krishna, very key point here is that he gives all of knowledge in a nutshell. He says, this is knowledge. Everything aside from this is ignorance. So you say, well, I need to read this book, I need to know this, I need to know that. Krishna tells you right here in 3 verses, this is everything you need to know. And then everything else is ignorance. So this is all of knowledge. Imagine, can any book, has any passage told us this? That A to Z, this is everything, all of knowledge. Not just all the knowledge that you need to know, but all knowledge. This is all knowledge. These I declare to be knowledge. Have we found some person or place that have said that this is the complete list of knowledge? Only Krishna, only God can do that because he is God. Everything else is ignorance. We go to school to learn so many things about how to become entangled with wife, children, home, and the rest. And here Krishna is saying that knowledge is freedom from the entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. Knowledge is the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. We go, millions of students go to school for a combined, you could say, millions of years, just to study how to avoid death, how to manage old age, how to avoid disease or how to cure disease. And Krishna is saying that knowledge is actually the perception of these things and therefore detachment from the body. But it's very interesting that in this entire list of knowledge, the first thing that Krishna mentions, the first quality of a knowledgeable person, the first symptom of knowledge, the first character of knowledge is humility. And as if we didn't get the point, he says the next one, pridelessness. And this is a theme in the Gita, that the first thing that Krishna mentions of a demoniac person or a foolish person is damba, pride. So the first quality of someone who has no knowledge is pride. Because if you actually don't know anything, then you think you know everything. And if you actually know something, then you're actually very humble. Or rather, the humble are actually who know something. Just like Albert Einstein, he had mentioned that the more I study the universe, the more I realize that I don't know anything about it. The more I become convinced of the miraculous, he says. The more it's not explainable, it's just a miracle. So those scientists in the history of this world, who were actually very intelligent, like Einstein and Newton, they were humble. They're very humble people, and they believed in God. Like Einstein didn't ascribe to a particular religion or a particular form of God, but he believed that there was a God, there was something divine. He said that the atheists were trying to rid the world of the miraculous. But the sentence which I mentioned, that he said, the more I study the world, the more I realize that it is a miracle. You can't simply give a rational explanation for all these things, because the universe doesn't follow a rational process. And that was his theory of relativity, where Newton said everything is clockwork, everything makes perfect sense, and it works in a mechanistic way. But he realized, no, it doesn't work in a mechanistic way. It's working in a very mystical way. Time is relative. And though we can calculate it, though we can, write about it, we actually cannot make sense of it. How is it that for me, half an hour is exactly 1 hour for someone else? That's what the relativity of time means. We can speak of it, but can we actually make sense of it? Like, for me, it was half an hour, for you, it was 2 hours or 1 year or 6 months. So this universe is a miracle. So humility, realizing how little we know, realizing how great God is, realizing how small we are, realizing our humble position in relation to others. That is the first characteristic of knowledge. So Prabhupada defines humility in the purport as one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. One should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. That's our biggest disease in this material world, is that we want to be honored by others. We want a place, a recognition, and that's natural human nature. But humility is that we're quite happy if others are honored and we are, not honored, or we don't have an eagerness to be the center of attention. And this is also why it's a fundamental problem, because this is why we come from the spiritual world. Because Krishna, in the spiritual world, Krishna is the center of attention. Krishna is in the center of the lotus. And at one point, we start thinking that I should be in the center. Not Krishna, but I should be in the center. So the spiritual world means that we put Krishna in the center. Material world means that I am in the center. That's the only difference. The whole material world revolves around me in the center. The moment we put Krishna, then it's the spiritual world, right? Krishna is in the center. My happiness is in serving Krishna and his devotees. That is true humility. Pridelessness. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion. Very interesting, Prabhupada says, that actually, so I mentioned how God consciousness is a form of humility because we're putting Krishna in the center. But then the problem comes that sometimes we become most proud when we are God conscious. Right? We can all relate with this. We become very proud that I'm such a great devotee. I have so many followers, so many people write me letters of appreciation, and so many people give me a thumbs up on WhatsApp. So it becomes, we become anxious for recognition, for our spirituality. So that's like kind of Maya's next trick. We leave all the material world, we leave everything, and then we come to spiritual life, to surrender our life to God, to follow the path of spirituality and humility. And then within that path itself, we want to be the center. And we get caught up again for a few lifetimes. So Krishna is mentioning this, and Prabhupada is mentioning this to remind us, to give us a very clear path so that we don't fall into that trap. And we're not eager to be recognized as great devotees, but rather we're eager to glorify other devotees. Non-violence is a quality of knowledge. And see, Krishna is going so steadily. First, humility and pridelessness. Nothing works. Nothing will go into our brain unless we have some humility, right? And then the next thing is that this is what Krishna taught through the incarnation of Buddha especially, but in every incarnation, that the basis of all spirituality is non-violence. As long as we are violent, hinsa towards others, physically, mentally, emotionally, verbally, unless we are non-violent, we cannot make spiritual progress. The spiritual progress will be very short-term and then we'll fall back again. And this is why 4 regulated principles, among them, Prabhupada emphasized no meat eating the most, because as long as we are being violent towards other creatures, other living beings, on a daily basis, it will be very hard to understand spiritual life. When we eat meat, we are also prone to alcohol and illicit sex. So meat eating is considered the most important in some ways, and then the others are equally important, but also meat eating is given special emphasis. No meat eating. So non-violence, the definition of non-violence is do not put others in distress. So even if we are justified, if we are putting someone else in distress, to some degree it is a violence, and that can disturb our bhakti. Just like we know Rupa Goswami, the famous story, one time he was sitting in meditation and he was seeing Krishna's pastimes in his meditation. He was deeply absorbed, just directly seeing Krishna's beautiful childhood pastimes. So while he was absorbed in his meditation, Krishna did something very funny. As a child, you know, he's very cute, Krishna, and very funny. So Rupa Goswami started to laugh. And at that time, an elderly Brahmana who was hunched back was walking across his hermitage. And this Brahmana was a little sensitive to his hunchback. And he didn't like it when people laughed at his hunchback. So when Rupa Goswami was laughing in his meditation, there's no one around him. And this Brahmana didn't realize that Rupa Goswami would be, you know, such an advanced Vaishnav. So he thought that Rupa Goswami is laughing at me. So he becomes very disturbed and he grumbles and he walks away and doesn't come back. And at that point, Rupa Goswami's meditation on Krishna breaks. And when it breaks, then Rupa Goswami thinks, how is it that I was meditating on Krishna and I couldn't meditate anymore on Krishna? And then he tries to find out the cause. And then he finds that Brahmana. Someone tells him that what happened at that time. And he makes up with that Brahmana. He makes him understand, I wasn't laughing at you. I was, you know, in meditation at that time. The great message being that even Rupa Goswami or any Vaishnava, our vision of Krishna will be broken if we are cause distress to any living being. So aparad, we were talking about this when Romapat Swami Maharaj was just visiting through, that aparad is the only thing ultimately the only thing that can actually deter. It doesn't completely stop, but immensely delay our bhakti. Because we were talking about Bharat Maharaj, and Bharat Maharaj was a pure devotee of the Lord on the level of bhava bhakti, but he had to wait 2 more lifetimes before going back to Godhead. So why was it? How could such a great devotee become attached to a deer? Why did Krishna not help him? He made a choice, but why did he make that choice when he's already so spiritually advanced and he gave up his kingdom, he gave up his family, wife, everything? And Jiva Goswami explains that it was due to an aparad. In his past life, he made an offense. And that aparad made him allowed him to become attached to the deer in this life. And then he had to wait before going back to God. So whatever we do or we don't do, it's okay, but we should always avoid aparad. Even we do a little less service, or even we do a different service. Of course, aparad doesn't mean that we always have to change our service. We can speak with the person, we can do all these things, but we should be convinced that I don't want to do aparad, because whatever the other person is or isn't, if I do aparad, then only I am the loser. Like Rupa Goswami, his meditation is broken. So our Krishna consciousness will be broken. And so it doesn't matter what the other person is. There's 100,000s of annoying people in this world. So it's only Krishna's arrangement that we have encountered one. And they will learn by Krishna's arrangement and their karma, etc., etc. But if I do aparad, if I put others into distress, then that will affect my bhakti. Let them do aparad, and that is their punishment. Tolerance. One should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. So this is the 3rd verse of the Shikshashtakam. Why these things are knowledge? Because these are the things that allow us to chant the holy name of Krishna. Humility and tolerance, right? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said we should string that verse around our neck, Trinadapi Sunichena. Because tolerance means, Prabhupada says, one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. It's very interesting how Prabhupada uses his words, and so effectively, right? He says one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. What he's suggesting is that, look, this is going to happen regularly. If you are serving the Lord, if you're trying to do anything for Krishna, people will insult you and dishonor you. People outside, but also even inside. Non-devotees and also devotees. And you should be practiced. Expected. Be practiced to bear this insult and dishonor without becoming disturbed. Sachinandan Maharaj in one place says that actually humility is easy to practice, because we are in complete control of that. That's our choice, to be humble or not to be humble. But humility is actually easier to practice. The hard one, he says, is tolerance. Because once we are humble, then people still insult us and they still dishonor us. And if we can tolerate that, then that is a great Vaishnava. That is a great Vaishnava. How we can tolerate. And this is why Prabhupada says that the greatness of a devotee is known by their ability to tolerate. And we see these in the great devotees, that how much they can tolerate, how much they are, unaffected by disturbing elements. You can see, their capacity is unbelievable. Just like my Guru Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, he was always around people, right? Every day he would meet like 200, 300 people. And quite honestly, that's very annoying to a person. Like, people want their personal space, my space, because people are by nature, Queen Kunti says, through social intercourse, there's disagreement. People are annoying by nature. So if you have so many people around you, eventually people, they start to, you need your own space. But then after meeting 200, 300 people, then even at night, there'd be like 5, 6 people in his room. sometimes brahmacharis, who would be giving a massage or something, and one would think, oh, he's getting, but that was actually very annoying to him also. Then you want to sleep, but someone's touching your body and like this. The devotees wanted to do it for him, but he would allow them just because he would not get affected or annoyed by other people. One time we were really getting bothered by someone, and we told him, this person is Maharaj, this person is kind of, being rough, and he's also being rough with you, and he's causing this disturbance and that disturbance. And Maharaj said, I'm not being bothered by him. I'm not feeling disturbed by him. And then that was the end of the conversation. So that's the difference of advancement, that when we are new in Krishna consciousness, we get disturbed by everything and anything that happens in the temple that devotees do. Yes, they're true problems, but why do we have to be disturbed by it? But as we make advancement in spiritual life, even the biggest things don't bother us, don't disturb our devotion. And that devotee steadily goes on with their service, and in fact uplifts that person. So that's tolerance. Simplicity. Without diplomacy, one should be so straightforward that he can disclose the real truth even to an enemy. Be simple, right? Krishna consciousness is to be simple. And the simplicity means that I have nothing to hide. There's no double. And you can only be simple when you're following the regulated principles, right? Just like if someone is having multiple affairs, then they cannot disclose the real truth to anyone, right? There's so complicated. But if someone is simple and honest, then they can disclose the truth to anyone because they're simple. So following the regulated principles, the one I was referring to as no illicit sex, makes a person simple. When we don't gamble, and then we're not speculating, then again, we are simple. When we are not taking intoxication, we are simple. So simplicity is being straightforward. A devotee is not blunt. That's different. Krishna actually says that one should speak the truth in a palatable way. Simplicity is not being blunt. Simplicity is being straightforward. You have nothing to hide. There's nothing, like in Maharaj's final will, my Guru Maharaj's final will, he just in 2 sentences told everything that he had. This is the money that I have that I keep for for travel purposes or for his green card. He had to have a certain amount, and these are the 3 things or 4 things that belong to me, and everything else belongs to Prabhupada and ISKCON. So managing so many things, but nothing to hide. Approaching a bona fide spiritual master. So approaching a bona fide spiritual master, this is in some ways the most important principle of knowledge. That is essential, Prabhupada says, because without the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual science. One should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services, so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, if he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advanced without the disciples following the regulated principles. Or the regulated principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. Wow, what a quote. So Prabhupada is saying that this is why in our movement we have so much service, right? We say, well, why not I just do my sadhana bhakti nicely? Why do I need to, do this service? Like, we cook prasadam, we distribute books, we clean the temple. Because he's saying that even if one's not following the regulated principles, even without following the regulated principles, a disciple can become immediately advanced by receiving the blessings of the spiritual master and we receive the blessings by the service we do for the spiritual master. The spiritual master becomes grateful to the disciple when the disciple tries to preach Krishna consciousness and serve the mission of his spiritual master, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But everyone has to follow the regulated principles. You ultimately cannot maintain your spiritual advancement unless you're following the regulated principles. So Prabhupada says, what this means is that by serving the spiritual master, we get a higher taste, and automatically it becomes very easy to follow the regulated principles. And this is why when we are inspiring someone, trying to preach to someone about Krishna consciousness, we should engage them in service. Because just telling them follow the regulated principles may not get them to follow the regulated principles. But if they're engaged in some service, then it'll be easy for them to follow the regulated principles. Cleanliness. External cleanliness means taking a bath. But for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna. So cleanliness is a element of knowledge. These days, people don't want to shower, but we must shower. And cleanliness, ultimately, the most important part is internal. Therefore, chanting brings about knowledge. Vidya vadhu jivanam. When we chant, we become clean, and that is knowledge. Steadiness. One should be very determined to make progress in spiritual life. So every day, not just some days, every day, then we will see the effect of the spiritual progress, steadiness. Self-control. One should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. And this boy is looking at that cupcake, and the question is whether that cupcake has eggs or not, right? So if you choose the cupcake with the egg, then you're choosing something which is detrimental to the path of spiritual knowledge, and then that's not knowledge, that's ignorance. So some self-control must be there. We just can't do anything and everything. And expect that we'll get Krishna's mercy. Except there's one time a devotee in Latvia who was in those countries, because of past wars and things, there's a lot of a great number of women in comparison to men. So there's like, 2 or 3 in the country, population wise, 2 or 3 at that time, many years ago, 2 or 3 men, 2 or 3 women to every man. And so the culture in that society was very promiscuous, because there's so many women, the men would not stick with the wife. They would just, they just had girlfriends. They wouldn't get married. Certain countries have this problem, right? And so Latvia, Lithuania was like that. Now there's devotees in those countries also. And the devotees are preaching there. They become very nice devotees with nice families, etc. Well, one devotee, he lived in that culture, born in that culture. So he became a devotee, and he was not used to being, used to sticking with one person, like dharma, like being married and dutifully leading your life in a life of self-control. So in Krishna consciousness, it's not allowed to have a partner outside of marriage, right? So he figured out that, well, I can just keep changing my marriage. So you get married to someone, and then 2 years later, divorce, get married to another person, then get divorced, get married to another person. So he thought, well, this is now according to the regulated principles. I'm, no illicit sex. I'm getting married, and like this, but there's no limitation to the number of times you can get married. Well, when my Guru Maharaj came there to Latvia, then this devotee was actually initiated. And so he spoke with him, and he said that you have misunderstood Krishna consciousness. You cannot change your you cannot change your partner every few years and expect to become a devotee. You must practice some self-control, right? Otherwise you cannot, you cannot even be a disciple. You must follow self-control. Very serious thing. So self-control at some point just has to be there. We have to intentionally, as an element of knowledge, remind ourselves that that self-control is part of spiritual progress. In today's society, this word control seems to be a very negative word. Like, don't control your desires, and don't repress yourself. It's not this, but actually the scriptures don't agree. By striving to control the mind and senses, one becomes purified. By making an effort to control the mind and senses, one becomes purified. And Krishna says this in the Gita, that one who is in knowledge strives to control the mind and senses. So we have to be determined. Renunciation of the objects of sense gratification. The tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. So this is how to renounce. Prabhupada explains in the purport the objects of sense gratification by giving the senses a higher taste. So we first control them, but then we can't just keep them controlled. We give them the higher taste. And the big taste is the tongue. So we eat Krishna prasadam. Nice feast, but all prasadam. And the second problem, especially in modern society, are the eyes. This Kali Yuga, and as it progresses, is characterized by vulgar images, right? Everywhere. TV, internet, phone, billboards, even in person, human beings, right? The way they're dressed. So how to escape this? It's like left and right. How to escape this bombardment? By seeing the beautiful form of Krishna, by engaging the eyes in the positive of always serving the deity of Krishna, the form of Krishna, seeing paintings of Krishna, seeing films about Krishna, and similarly the other senses as well. The absence of false ego. When the sense of I am is applied to this false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is ego. That is real ego. We cannot give up our ego because ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with the body. So from false ego to real ego. I'm 100% spirit soul. Bomb-proof, fire-proof, waterproof, wind-proof. This is what Krishna says, right? In the Gita, chapter 2, it says it cannot be withered by the wind, cannot be burned by fire. So if you want something that's, bomb-proof, that's you, the spirit soul. The perception of the evil of birth, disease, death, old age. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, Prabhupada says, considering the distress of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. The impetus, Prabhupada is so practical, is that I'm going to die, I'm going to sick, this place is a place of suffering, and that is the impetus, unless you see the reality as it is. So this is not based upon faith, this is based upon reason. You can see by reason, by your own observation, that life is temporary. So what's the point of faith? There's no faith. This is the reality, and that reality gives us the impetus to practice spiritual life. This life is full of suffering and it's temporary. So what is then the path of happiness? I'm actually giving a presentation today. We'll be giving a presentation to the youth here we have in Naperville on how Krishna consciousness is the most reasonable choice. Because the point is that that we have so many choices, and all of them could be true or false, including Krishna consciousness. We don't know, the question that they have, that they're addressing is, how do we gain faith in Krishna? How do we know it's true? Our parents say so, but how do we know? So the response is that you don't know if anything is true. But among the options that you have, based on your observation, based upon your contemplation, based upon your reasoning, based on what you've seen and heard, Krishna consciousness is the most reasonable option. So then, we go through all the different options that we have, all the different philosophies, ideas, viewpoints, and see how good are they? Do they make more sense than Krishna consciousness? If they do, then we should accept them. But the conclusion is that nothing makes more sense. So therefore, Krishna consciousness is the most reasonable option. But you can only even consider this if you first perceive that there's a problem: birth, disease, old age, and death. Detachment. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. So beautiful. Krishna consciousness is never giving up feeling. Even perfect devotees have feelings. There's one passage in the Bhagavatam where Jad Bharat is insulted by Maharaj Rahugna, and the Bhagavatam says that he feels hurt by his insult. There's feeling in the spiritual world also. An advanced devotee doesn't mean that he loses feelings, but he's not attached to anything material, to anything if it's adverse to his spiritual progress. And even there, it doesn't mean that he's averse to them. So family may not be conducive for a spiritual life. Maybe you are in Krishna consciousness, but your whole family is against it. So in that case, the devotee may not be attached to their ways and to their philosophies and viewpoints and their lifestyle, but the devotee may also not be averse to it. One may continue living in that situation because one needs to, for practical reasons, but he's not attached to it. He's attached to his first duty, his spiritual life. But if the family is a devotee, like we see in this nice image, then we can make the whole family into devotees, and we will naturally feel affection towards them, but not affection to the point that it becomes detrimental to our spiritual progress. See, that's the ultimate measuring point. What is favorable for spiritual progress? Some affection, natural affection, is favorable because it helps in the cultivation of spiritual life. But if you become too affectionate, like Bharat Maharaj became affectionate to the deer, then that is unfavorable. So, so this is the measuring stick. If we make them into devotees and then we're attached to them as devotees, then that's spiritual. That is spiritual attachment. But if we're attached to the body and just the fact that they're related with our body, then that is not spiritual. Freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. Wow. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, exactly what we're doing right now. and engage oneself in deity worship. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there's no need to change from family life to renounced life. Here Prabhupada says it. He gives such a nice, sublime process. Sit down with your family members morning and evening and chant. Sit down morning and evening and read books like Bhagavad Gita and worship the deity. If we do this and we don't break the 4 regulative principles, we don't eat meat, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, then that is renounced life. No need to change to renounced life, because that is renounced life. That is renunciation. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress. So one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. This is a theme of the Gita that Krishna repeats again and again. Undisturbed by happiness and distress. Because as long as our actions are governed by happiness and distress, pleasure and pain, rather than by our principles in our Krishna consciousness, we will never be able to make steady progress. Because every time things get bad, we're going to stop. So, Krishna says in the 2nd chapter, Matra Sparshas Konteya, they come like winter and summer seasons. We have to be undisturbed in either circumstance, undisturbed in happiness or distress, which of course is easier said than done, but practice makes a man perfect. We have to strive for it. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me, Krishna. So now, from general things, it's now getting into spiritual, particular Krishna things. So Krishna is saying that knowledge culminates in constant and unalloyed, unmotivated and uninterrupted. Anya bhilashada shunyam jnana karma jnanavritam anukulyena Krishna shilamam bhaktirottama. So it's uninterrupted.
Don't stand in the aisle. Sorry, don't stand in the aisle. Be sure.
It's uninterrupted and it's unmotivated. And therefore, Krishna has given us a full process that we can do it 24 hours a day, because we have so much variety in Krishna consciousness. We don't have to just do Krishna consciousness 2 hours in the morning and the rest of the day we're in Maya. But no, all day we can do it, because there's so many different things to do for Krishna. And even our work can be a service to Krishna. If we offer the results of our work to Krishna, our family can be Krishna consciousness, process, part of that. If we make our family into devotees, and this is, I think, Bhakti Sarup Damodar Maharaj as a child. Aspiring to live in a solitary place. Prabhupada writes, one may test himself by seeing how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. So, living in a solitary place can also be dangerous for a neophyte. If we stay in a solitary place, we generally end up not practicing Krishna consciousness. This is why in all religions, when they're sent for preaching work, they're sent in twos. Because if you're alone, you can get distracted very easily. We always need association. So Prabhupada is deciding, what does solitary place mean? It means that we have no material association. How long can we be without going to the movies, without going to the bar, without going to the mall, just being in spiritual association, without unwanted association? That is solitary place. If we are without wanted association, then though we may be alone, we are constantly living with our desires. And that is not correct. So being in the association of only devotees or with devotees always is living in a solitary place. Giving Krishna consciousness to others is also living in a solitary place, because we are not taking their association, we're giving them Krishna's association. Detachment from the general mass of people. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema. Going or enjoying some social function, because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. So the whole world is engaged in this wining and dining, right? Wining and dining. This is, everyone's doing this. And it's so prevalent that sometimes as devotees, we think that, it's okay. Like, we should also engage with this a little bit. And maybe they're normal and we are abnormal. But Prabhupada here is saying, no, the general mass of people are engaged in the general activities. The devotee actually thinks that, no, I am different. Devotees are different. And I want to therefore be detached from the general mass of people, meaning that he's not part of mainstream society. Just like many parents in our Krishna conscious movement, they are concerned that if they don't send their children to school and high school, there'll be misfits in society. They won't be able to meld with the general mass of people. There'll be outliers in society. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the point. We should not be too fit, too much in the melting pot of modern society. If we aren't misfits, if we're fitting in, then that means we're doing what they're doing: eating, drinking, sleeping, mating, defending, and simonizing, right? Just sports, all these things. We are simply going to develop the same habits. So it's good to be a little of a misfit. It's good to be detached from the general mass of people. Krishna here is saying that is a principle of knowledge. That's a part of knowledge. Nothing wrong to be different. Accepting the importance of self-realization. This service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So bhakti, or devotional service, is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction. So beautiful. Prabhupada again, each sentence is like a Magna Carta. Right? Each sentence is, you could just put that sentence on your living room wall, right? And you'll need many walls to put all of Prabhupada's amazing sentences. Our service to Krishna is eternal. And the service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. That service is eternal. And this is why it doesn't end with the body. It doesn't end. That service goes on. That service itself that we did is an eternal connection. So bhakti, or devotional service, is eternal. The bhakti, the devotion that we have and the service that we do are both eternal, and one should be established in that conviction. Philosophical search for the absolute truth. One should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. So amazing, huh? So that type of research is very good. The problem is that everyone in the world is researching about atoms and molecules. And that's, not the best use of our time. Researching into the nature of the soul, self-realization, the nature of bhakti, the nature of Krishna's leelas, pastimes, and the spiritual world, the nature of the process of devotional service. That is the real object of research, and that is knowledge. All that research, all those books, everything related to Krishna, that is knowledge. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, now there's so many that we went through. Which is most important? The most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. All the other elements of knowledge come from this one. Mai chananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini. The process of knowledge terminates in the unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So devotional service to the Lord purifies our existence and brings everything else. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. So it's said that all the good qualities of the demigods are there in the body of a devotee, automatically, by being a devotee. But it doesn't happen overnight. They're in the body of a pure devotee. The new devotee may be serving the Lord, and therefore they're on that path of perfection. They'll reach there soon. But in the beginning, it's possible that they may not be completely humble or prideless or tolerant because they've just started the path of devotion. Okay, so here we go. And I was hoping to finish this chapter by now, and we just finished this section. But I'll go maybe for another 10 minutes, see how far we get. And then the rest of the chapter is rather straightforward. So it's maybe something we can do in our own time. So we talked about jnana, that was knowledge. Now gyeya, right? This is the last one that's left. The soul and the super soul are the real objects to be known. The soul is a type of Brahman that is eternal and subordinate to the supreme Brahman. The super soul is all-pervading, transcendental, all-reconciling, undivided, and the source of all knowledge and enlightenment. So Krishna gives the qualities of the super soul, which is the object of knowledge. He describes what the object of knowledge is, the supreme Brahman. So the object of knowledge, number 2, is the super soul, which is Krishna. Number 1 was the soul, Brahman. Number 2 is the supreme Brahman, or the super soul. What's his nature? The verses describe, and you can read this in chapter 13, his senses are everywhere. He's the source of everything, he's without senses. He maintains all living entities, he devours them. He is unattached, meaning that he puts them through this cycle of this creation. Like Arjuna sees all the living entities going into his mouth, that is death, time. He's unaffected by the modes, and he's the master of the modes. He's far and near, like the Upanishads describe. And he's a source of light, subtle and undivided. Qualities of the super soul are described. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads, and faces. And he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists, pervading everything. So Arjuna has just seen this in chapter 11, right? The universal form. He just seen this form, so he can truly believe what Krishna is saying. Sarvata pani padam tat. Everywhere are his hands and legs. So how is that possible? Well, our hands and legs are also Krishna's hands and legs, because Krishna can, if he so desires, function through our hands and legs. Just like in the case of the spiritual master, Krishna functions through the mouth, through the hands and the legs of the spiritual master. He communicates to the disciple, to the devotee, through the spiritual master. And this is why the spiritual master's hands and legs becomes transcendental, because they're engaged only in the service of the Lord. They become vehicles or instruments for Krishna because they're fully dedicated to him. And this is why their body is put into samadhi. It's not burnt. Just like a deity is never burnt, the body of a pure devotee is never burnt, because their hands and legs become Krishna's hands and legs. Because Krishna's enacting his will through their hands and legs. Just like when Sanatana Goswami wanted to give up his life. He wanted to jump off of Govardhan Hill because he thought that he was committing an offense to Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya was embracing his body and his body had sores in it, and the sores would ooze on Lord Chaitanya's golden body. The Lord Chaitanya told Sanatana Goswami that you cannot give up your body because your body is not yours, it belongs to me. And I have so much planned to do through your body. All these literatures, these granthas, you are going to write. I am going to write through your body. So I have so much to accomplish through your body. You have no right to end it. So that's Krishna's hands and legs everywhere. So how can you escape God's eyes? If God's eyes are everywhere, how can you escape his God's eyes? Therefore, we may escape the government. We may escape, society. We may get away with something, but we cannot escape Krishna's eyes. Krishna knows exactly what we're up to. Krishna knows exactly what punishment we will get. And we can't fool Krishna. We can make a fool, we can even fool ourselves, but we cannot fool Krishna. This is why the scriptures say that the wheels of karma grind slowly, but they grind very fine. Right? Because Krishna notices everything. And he doesn't just fix the activities that we do. He rectifies the consciousness that's causing those activities. Everywhere, God's eyes are there, so you cannot escape. You are wanting witness? Here are so many witnesses. How you can hide your sinful activities? That is not possible. You can hide yourself from the material laws, that the police has not seen me. Then I may escape. No, God's law, you cannot do that. That is not possible. So we should remember it, that when we act sinfully, then there are so many witnesses, and we have to be punished. You cannot escape. Kam ku swayam swayam. These are so many gods, witnesses, and over and above them, swayam, the personality of Godhead in his super soul feature. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarvata pani padam tat. The Lord has his hands and legs everywhere. You'll find that Krishna has nothing to do. He is simply enjoying with the gopis, cowherd girls, and Radharani. He's not killing the demons. The Krishna who kills the demons is Vasudeva Krishna. He's not the original Krishna. Krishna expands himself. The first expansion is Baladev. From Baladev comes Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. So in his Vasudeva feature, Krishna acts in Mathura and Dwarka. But Krishna, in his original feature, remains in Vrindavan. Krishna's hands and legs are everywhere, so what is he doing? He's simply enjoying. He doesn't have to do anything, and it's his expansions and the living entities that do things for him. Okay, so I'm going to stop at this point. Perfect.
Do you mind going to the previous slide, Prabhuji? If we...
Sure.
Sorry to...
Yes, I understand. No, these are nice quotations.
The previous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just...
You want to write?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 5 minutes for questions. I have to actually leave in 5 minutes. So if there's any comments, questions, we can take like 1 or 2 today. Reflections. Yes, Radhika Mataji.
So yes, so I have some points.
Hare
So
Krishna.
I just that so you can see that a pure devotee
Your
anger
voice is cracking up a little bit. Can you be closer to the mic or something? You're cracking up a little bit, your voice.
Yes, bro. Is it okay now?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Yeah. So pure devotees. So we can see that a pure devotee's anger is good, as we can see as the example of Hanumanji. And then my next point is that Prakriti means nature, Purusha means the enjoyer, Kshetra means the field of activities, Kshetra Jnana means the knower of the field. Jnana, knowledge, means the process of knowing.
Mm.
Jnana means the object of knowing of and knowledge.
Mm.
Humility means one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others.
Mm.
Rightlessness means people are very anxious to be famous for their religion. Non-violence means not to put others into distress. That is why Prabhupada says that VTT is the most important of the 4 principles. And you also showed us the picture of the boy that was like that he had an apple and the muffin and the
Mm.
muffin and
Yes.
um and it was I'm sorry bro, it was like self-control, but yeah, sorry.
Very
And
nice.
then
Thank you.
tolerance and then simplicity, and then my next point is that by approaching a spiritual master we can progress in devotional service, and then cleanliness,
Mm.
steadiness,
Yes.
self-control. So here you set the boy's example, and
Mm.
then everything related to Krishna is knowledge. And then my last point is that if we act sinfully, we will be punished, and it is guaranteed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such a nice kind of summary and reminding us of the key points. Thank you. Thank you. And Pankaj Prabhu, we will next have your question. Hare Krishna, Pankaj Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So first of all, this is my first class, so I want to thank you very much for including me into the group.
Thank you.
And
Joining.
yeah, and I have just a simple one question. I know we talked about like non-violence and that as a, that is also a knowledge. But sometimes, you have to do violence, right? Because if you see Bhagavad Gita also, right, it's started from the Kurukshetra only, right?
Yes.
And sometimes to protect the dharma, right, we have to do violence also, right?
Yes.
So non-violence, yes, as a like knowledge, yes, but dharma, sorry, Oh. Is that fine, right? That's what I'm trying to say here.
Of course. See, so and now you bring up a very good point, a very thoughtful point, that in the Gita, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight. And that is violence that brings difficulty to others, distress to others. But Arjuna is not bringing distress to others for his own account, right? He is acting on Krishna's desire. He's acting for Krishna to relieve the distress of others. So if Arjun went and said, "No, I'm going to fight this battle for myself. I am going to fight this battle so that I can be king," then that would be called violence. But if he's saying, "No, I'm fighting for dharma because this is the right thing to do. I'm fighting for Krishna," then he's not fighting for himself. So he's not putting them exactly into distress, but rather he is relieving, which is Krishna's point to him. He's relieving the distress of others because he's allowing good to prevail. And secondly, he's acting according to Krishna's desire. Very good point. Yes.
Yeah. So again, in the practical world, right? If war happens, right, and sometimes we say, oh yeah, why we are why we are having a war, right? But sometimes in order to protect the dharma, I think war is important, right?
Yes.
And like again, I'm not saying who is right or who is wrong, but I'm saying if it says that yes, we have to protect the dharma, then violence is necessary, right?
Yes. Very nice. Yep. Yeah. No, that's Prabhupada says when all good argument fails to protect the weak from the strong, some violence may be necessary. The king has to punish the citizens. That's putting them into distress.
Yeah.
The criminals. He has to punish the criminals.
Yeah.
That is okay because that is not on account for oneself. So, yeah, that is very good.
Thank you,
you.
Prabhuji.
Thank you. And thank you for joining the class. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna.
yeah. No, Hare Krishna.
I think we should stop here just because I need a few minutes to prepare for our next class that we're having, a next session. So, Mother Krishna Prabhu, next time we'll start with your comment or question.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare
So much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you.
Prabhuji. Thank you.
Krishna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.